Well, good afternoon, Chris. Thank you for joining me for afternoon tea.
I haven't even got tea.
You haven't got
squash.
You got squash.
I normally have tea.
So my first question to you is, what was your childhood like?
Well, I describe it as a very run-of-the-mill childhood. Nothing particularly spectacular, nothing traumatic. I suppose when I got into my teenage years, that was where the most trauma was, and that was caused by my elder sister. I'm the middle of two girls.
Oh, yeah.
And you know, she was the one breaking down the barriers, if you like, for us two, in what she was allowed to do and what not allowed to do.
Yeah.
The parents weren't over strict, but you know, anything like that. So, but she knew what she wanted to do, and you know, you couldn't stop her. But she was great. We had a great childhood, all three of us. You know.
Yeah.
So I suppose if I look back and try to be picky about it, the only thing that I ever had a problem was with, I would say, dare I say it, if she watches this, pardon me, Mum, my mother's expectations of me. She dressed me so well to go to school. And this is junior school, you know, before, not even grammar school. I went to a grammar school when I was 11, in the old 11 plus. I managed to get past that. Whereas most of my friends at school failed it, you know. Half a dozen of us went to the grammar school. The rest of my class ended up at the secondary school, as was then. But I just felt like I was being prepared for something bigger and better than, which, you know, perhaps not a bad thing, you know, for your mum. Because my mum was I won't call her a go-getter. My dad worked in a steel mill, you know, one of those got closed down in the 80s, late 70s by Thatcher. And he was a, you know, down-to-earth black country man, basically. Never learned to drive, whereas my mother wanted to do everything, you know. Yeah. She became one of the early managers of Avon Cosmetics and things like that. She ran her own business as soon as she could. She worked in all kinds of different things. Tupperware, she got into Tupperware, became a manager in that, had a car with all that sort of thing. And this is in the 70s, 80s, you know, early on in the, if you like, the marketing explosion of those sort of things. And then she became, when she'd had enough of that, she decided to work for the civil service and worked in the Customs and Excise Office. And from there, that's when she introduced me to my first job. But I won't jump to that yet. But school was, I say, a boys' grammar school. So you can imagine that. And just across the field, through a fence, was the girls' high school. Wow. Can you imagine? And the timing of all this was awful because I did okay at school. I was sort of in the top half a dozen of students in the class, whatever it was that I did. My big forte was art, but I'll talk about it anyway. But the school issue was, in the last year, the government changed all the way schools worked. Grammar schools were out. Yeah. So we amalgamated in our last year. Can you imagine what that did to the hormones of 15, 16-year-olds who had never had the opportunity before? Oh, there's so many of us, so many got into such trouble, you know, snogging behind the bike shed and all that sort of thing. It was fun, but yes, it took our eyes off the important stuff, which was exams, O-levels. And I just about got enough to scrape into art college. That was my forte in life. Other than football, I played football for the school teams. I played for years. And as I'll talk about a bit later, I damaged my ankles several times. I was a centre forward. I was good with the old bonds. I'm fully expecting to get MND or whatever you get later in life as a result, because the balls in those days were heavy, not like today. And I'm sure a lot of those people suffering from these dementia-based neurological diseases will all say the same. It was, part of the game. You just, if you were good at it, you were good at it. So that's what you did. So yeah, enjoyed school life all the way through. I was known as Bones, being tall and gangly and thin, and Smiler was my other. I never stopped smiling, I suppose. So yeah, enjoyed school life.
So did you have any problems at school then?
No, other than say that last year with girls and things, and denying what was obviously true, getting the odd detention here and there for that sort of thing. But nothing. As I say, nothing out of the ordinary. I was a very middle of the road, fairly straight, fairly. If you use the word successful, I never struggled with. I'm trying to think of the worst thing I had. I think it's probably something like biology or something like one of the sciences. No, the one thing I wish I had been better at, if you like, from school point of view, is music. I did enjoy music. I love music. I became a DJ in my late teens into 20s for a few years because I loved soul music, especially Northern soul and things. And playing it, dancing to it and all those sort of things, I loved. But playing it, like I'm using the fingers because I'm going to tell you the story about the recorder. My music teacher, he put some bruises on my knuckles, I tell you. Really put me off music as a result. Yeah, because you get one note wrong, and he was there walking up and down the aisle, bashing people over the knuckles. That's no way to encourage people to enjoy music, is it? But he did put me off. And whilst I would have loved to have learned saxophone, for instance, that was the instrument I really would have liked to play. I don't know, it's the old mind thing, something was put in there to prevent me doing it, really, at that time. So other than that, school was okay.
So then you left school and then went to art college, you said?
Art college in Stourbridge, which is where I live still, one of the better art colleges in the country, as was then. Really loved that. Really loved art, and quickly got into graphics, design work. Typography was my big thing. I loved words, not just words in a creative writing sense, but in the formation of every letter and things like all that sort of work. I enjoyed calligraphy and all those sort of things. And did very well in the graphic design department there. Left there early because my mum, back at the Customs and Excise office opposite, a place where she knew there was a job going, went over there and basically got a job for me at the Express and Star newspaper, which a lot of people around the Midlands have worked for. But I was the youngest ever designer at the Express Star, designing adverts, and that was a real, baptism. Of fire, if you like, in terms of put that into the newspaper world, and it's you've got to produce half a dozen different things in minutes, not hours. You just never had the time. So it was great, because maybe became one of the things we did in those early days was coming up with lots of good ideas. We were a design department at that time, That quickly stopped when the free newspapers came in, the Trader, as it was called, before it became the Chronicle for the Express and Star. And that's when I saw the writing on the wall and decided I'd had enough of that. By that time, and we're talking early 80s now, by that time I'd built up a clientele of people who relied on me to produce their advertising materials. You know, they didn't go to a design agency or an advertising agency anyway. They just kept spending their money in the local newspaper, and I was there producing their artwork for nothing. Basically, it was never paid for by them, other than through their advertising spend with the newspapers. But when they realised what was happening, they quickly said, "Oh, well, we'll pay you for this." I thought, wow, great, another job. And so before I left the Express and Star, I built up a clientele base who were paying me on the side anyway. And started my design studio from that point on, really. And it just went from advertising to brochures, all kinds of media, really, eventually.
Okay.
So,
and then you got involved in, you call yourself the neurologist?
Oh, no, yeah, well, I did send you a little note back about this. There's a big expanse of time here. We've missed out. Right, so.
Okay.
Just quickly, fill in all the gaps. 1984, I left the Express and Star, set up my own design agency. Employed by 1990, 7 people working with me, a couple of salespeople, a couple of other designers in the studio, obviously doing less and less design work myself, other than the conceptual stuff. Picked up lots of clients as I went through this sort of time period. I was working with 2 people in particular, one of whom was, he'd worked for a big company doing typesetting. That was his background. We got together early 90s and set up a new digital typesetting business. Actually, no, it was earlier than that. It was about 88, 89. That was it. And I also worked with a publishing guy who ran his own magazine. And I literally, before the advent of computers, did all the paste up work for him. Literally, physically pasting up, specking up typesetting to go to the typesetter, which is how I knew this other guy, and we all sort of got together. But in 1985, because this publishing guy had also worked for the Express and Star and gone off and started on his own magazine in Shropshire. When I left the Express and Star, I went to work in the same office as him, doing all his paste up work for him. And he went off to the very first Mac Expo in London, came back and said to me these words: "I've just ordered your replacement." I thought, "You what?" And a couple of weeks later, probably more like near a month later, one of the very first Macintosh computers in Britain arrived on my desk. And I said, "What am I supposed to do now?" And he says, "That's yours. That's for you to learn how to use it." You know? And so I can claim to be one of the very first users of Macs in Britain in the design world. And because I'd also done some writing work for him for his magazines, it was all a very sort of domestic, consumer-based thing about places to visit and all sorts of things. Even I've started doing a technology column for him, basically. And I did a lot of writing for him about how technology was changing the world and things. And I wrote for Adline, which was the Midlands version of Campaign magazine, which is the big advertising magazine and marketing magazine in the country. And I wrote this piece about how the Mac, even then, you know, a year or two after I'd had it, was going to change the world. It's hardly touched most desks by then. And they said, we can't publish this. It's going to scare people to death. People are going to lose jobs if this happens, and all that sort of attitude to it. And whilst that was semi-true to some extent, the Mac became the creative design tool for anybody who wanted to do anything seriously. And it just went forward in leaps and bounds in technological terms. You know, when I first had it, it was a little 9-inch black and white screen, 12 fonts. You can see the bitmap, you know, the edges of the cut, you know, any bends and things. You can see little blocks and things. But it was fascinating, you know, the whole process of learning how to use computers and doing typesetters out of work, who I used to go to, which is how I came to set up the other business with the typesetting guy, because it was all about reprographics then, and producing films and plates ready for printers. That was the in-between thing that you could do on a Mac, but you couldn't actually produce the physical thing. That was another business altogether. So I got involved in that as well. And then that potted along for 2 or 3 years. I'm trying to piece it all together time-wise now. 1995, my younger sister, who had mentioned, had married a guy from Salisbury area, and he worked for MOD, and he was stationed in Atlanta, Georgia, in America, for 18 months, I think it was. Very quickly, just after she got there and set her home up there and everything, she sent me a magazine over from America saying, "You've got to see what's happening here." And she knew I liked technology and whatever. And it was the very first internet magazine. 1996, I think that was 5, 6. And so again, I jumped at it. I just saw it coming our way, and you know, I just bought the technology, got things going. There's all dial-up accounts then. Can you remember the telephone lines? Those sort of sounds. And loved it, obviously loved it, and it fitted perfectly with the Mac scenario, you know, by which time we'd advanced to, you know, whatever the new Mac was that was coming out, you know, you had to have it, you had to be a step ahead on everything. A great example of that was not Mac specifically, but technologically, just before all that, we all relied on fax machines, yeah. Which, what's one of those now? You say that to an 18-year-old now. Oh, what? Why would you need one of those? And I remember very early on buying one of the very first colour fax machines, because it's all design work and you needed to send this stuff to printers and things to see match colours and all those sort of things. And it cost me £5,000. A fax machine. Within about a year, it was out of date and useless, because the Mac, you know, took over all those sort of things. So that was fascinating, and a great time. Time went on. Started servicing clients with internet websites, designing websites, things like that. That was very tricky to get people to understand that sort of thing. But one of my clients then, I branched out all over the country. I was doing work, you know, you could be anywhere. Once you got your Mac and your internet connection, you could service people all over the place. I worked for an energy company based up in Yorkshire. And one of there were a family of 7 sons, apparently. And the youngest wasn't going to get into the business. This is a business that had started by delivering coal back in the 40s, 50s, and had grown into an energy company. It had its fingers in all the pies and was very successful. But the youngest son couldn't see his place in there because his brothers were, you know, all managing the different divisions or whatever. So he once, you know, I'd done a lot of work for him and I'd proven myself to them as a company, working with a business what would you call him? A business management guy who went in as a director to help put change in place for companies, which I've been doing myself in lots of ways for people because of technology, telling them how they needed to move forward and how to change the way they thought about the future. That was the big issue really for most people. People hate change, don't they? We all know that. Yeah. He said, right, I'll come in with you. I'll put some money in. You've got all the, the knowledge, the skills, the expertise already. We'll set up a business in the purely selling internet stuff. What I didn't realise at the time, having said yes, was the market we were going into. But he seemed to know his stuff. He knew lots of people in the industry because it was again sort of a sideline for him, and that was antiques. Yeah. Now, the worst thing you can say to an antique dealer is you need to put all this stuff on a computer. What? Nobody's going to buy that unless they can touch it and feel it and pick it up and look at the bottom and all that sort of thing. Yeah, you can still do that on a computer, even very basically as it was then. This is 1998, let's say. 97, 98, yeah. And we went out to all the antique shows around the country and things like that, and taking our little Mac with us and this, that, and the other portable version that we had then, obviously. And we got laughed out of court basically. Lots of them who said things like, "Well, does this computer come in a rosewood cabinet or mahogany?" They literally thought we were joking. But we pushed on. We started to build websites for antique dealers who had a little bit about them for specific types of things. Big furniture and things was never going to work, obviously. No. But collectibles, Staffordshire pottery, for instance, things of those sort of things that you could show. Yeah. And you could show pictures at the bottom, and you could even show. It was a bit too early for video and things then. You couldn't really do moving images back in those days. But you could do that sort of thing, and we built what's called a portal site for antique dealers to all be joined to, basically. So we promote the portal site. They all have their little space on it with their own stock and their own ability to interact with the customer and do their deals as normal. Wasn't as sophisticated as it could have been at that time, obviously, but it quickly became more and more so. We talked to the big boys, the Sotheby's, the Christie's, people of that nature, who didn't get it. They still were not interested in investing in the future from that point of view. But we did an awful lot of work for, again, this is one market that did very well, silver. The London Silver Vaults in London, big underground complex of predominantly Jewish-owned silver dealers. They lapped it up. They loved it. We did a lot of business with them because they could see they could see that this was going to get money in, basically. And so we did quite well with them. And we picked up more and more and more, and our name got known in the area. We were called Antique Site, basically, simple as that. Our company was called Antiques into. I forgot what it was called then. And our basic design company was called Intersites, and then we started several different focused product sector focused companies, and antiques was the first one. And we got noticed by the Americans, which was good in lots of ways. The great thing about the antiques industry is that Britain represents 45 to 50% of all antiques in the world that were available to buy on a market. and Europe, obviously part of that was European as well. A lot of stuff comes through France and Germany and Italy. But Britain was the marketplace, basically, technologically. We were ahead of the game there. The Americans are obviously 3 or 4 years ahead of us technologically, but America doesn't have any antiques. It's just not old enough. They wouldn't know what an antique was, really. An antique, it's changed here in Britain since, but an antique in their language was something 50 years or more old. In Britain, that was 100 years. Big difference. If it wasn't 100 years, you couldn't actually call it an antique. It was collectible. And we had 2 different markets going on there, obviously, or both online. And a company called Antique Net, came over to do the tour of Britain, basically, all the different sites, and we met 2 or 3 times. We met them at different shows, and they said, "We've got to buy into you because you've got it all wrapped up here." And so we were bought out for promises, if you know what I mean. And it was fascinating. We spent a lot of money marketing their name instead of our own. And within 2 years, because of the people like Sotheby's and Christie's not being interested or going their own route, deciding to do their own thing, thinking they were the big boys in terms of attracting other antique dealers. They decided, well, we can't afford to do this anymore. We're going to have to sort of give it up, go back to America, which was a bit of a bombshell, as you can imagine. By this time, we had focused all our attention on antiques online. We weren't even designing work for any other companies, basically, with a couple of exceptions. And we were dropped in it big time. We literally almost lost our houses, basically, because all the options, as they were called, for them to buy us out, fully, were just never came to fulfillment. So we dissolved our partnership, myself and the guy from up north. And I just went back to designing websites for anybody and anybody, really. And I lost a lot of love for what I was doing then as well, as you can imagine. But, crack on, get back on the horse and do a bit more for lots of different people. At that time, I started writing a book. I took time out. I thought there's no point busting a gut for this. I started writing a book, which is still half finished. Which I will try and go back to as and when I can. I did a little bit during lockdown, actually, to try and bring it up to date. But there's more important things at the moment, like neurology. But that's a different story. Before I even get to neurology, the next thing I did, somebody locally, a friend of a friend, just said, this new special needs college is opening down the road from you. Come and have a look. I think there might be something you might be interested in doing part-time. Most people starting there were just part-time tutors for young adults. 16 to 25 was the typical age group, with autism, ADHD, any other kind of learning difficulties associated with the autistic spectrum, basically. And I went there as technology teacher, onto basic PCs, unfortunately, which I had to learn very quickly how to use a PC rather than a Mac, but that was fairly straightforward. And also to be the publishing manager of the place. So we put a magazine together to help promote it and to give every student the opportunity to if they couldn't write themselves, somebody would help them write, but to express themselves in what they were learning at this college. And it probably still is to most of the people who actually go there. It is a phenomenal way of approaching people with special needs. It was all craft based. the things they did were, obvious things you might think of, like felt making, things you use your hands. It's all about haptics, the using the hand muscle memory and repeating that process and things like that. Weaving, willow weaving, things like that. But each of their colleges, and this was their third one, I believe, is centered around a special industry. They got one in Stroud, which was to do with, what was that? I'm trying to think what that one was. Their specialist industry there. There's a lot of farming associated with that one. There's a trout farm, for instance, part of that one down in Stroud. Here, I'll jump to what's most relevant. Here, it's the glassmaking industry. It was centered on a glassmaking site that had been redundant for 5 to 10 years. And can you imagine somebody with special needs trying to blow glass, make something out of glass? It's a real challenge. It's something that even, neurotypical people never get the opportunity to ever go at doing this sort of thing. But these kids, young adults, were actually, absolutely turned on by the ability to be able to make something. And once you've got that in the process, they just lapped it up, and they learned more academic type things at the same time. So going sideways, about language and things like that. The biggest issues for most of them was sort of social interaction, knowing how to interact with each other and with other people. To this day, I've still got the one lad who kicked the hell out of me. I speak to him on a weekly basis because he's one of my advocates, as I call him. Got his first job about 3 years ago, and this is he's in his late 20s now, and he's just about to have started his second job, and they've already earmarked him for promotion because he's so, he's brilliant at computer stuff. He absolutely is brilliant. But it takes a while for people with these disabilities to find what's right for them. And you've got to work with them and go their speed. That's the real problem for most education. We're all in mainstream education. We're all pushed down a standard line to become, another clone of somebody else, to fit into a square box like a round peg.
Yeah.
But that was going great. We we did a big funding appeal to another charity. We got £250,000 to build a technological centre at the place, a Mac suite, beautiful, all the stuff we could possibly do. Digital print shop, which I managed and ran, teaching, work skills for the students, things like that. But what I was doing was never seen as a core curriculum item. It's not a craft in the traditional hand sense. Technology was seen as the devil's work, if you like, to some extent. And I can totally understand that, because it wasn't. Technology was, at that point, was a distraction for most students, if you like. They would love to come and play on the computers, play being the operative word, but not actually do much learning in that process. Whereas jewellery, which was another one, making jewellery. I'm trying to think of all the wonderful things I did. Iron making. There's a fantastic blacksmith, he's still there now. He was one of the golden nuggets, I'd call him, for these sort of students, because he was like them, in his learning abilities. So he worked with them in the way that they totally understood and were, at one with. But unfortunately, when was it? Into the 2000s now, sorry. 2014, 15. No, it was probably before that, wasn't it? Yeah. They pulled all the money. The government stopped giving money to these things. And so the core curriculum had to be protected. Our wonderful £250,000 facility was mothballed, basically, and I was no longer needed, along with quite a few others, obviously. And I hit the bottom, you know, mentally. I was distraught, really. All through this, you see, I'd been, because of the digital printing process and teaching, I was teaching people on real work that I was doing for other people.
Yeah.
The college were absolutely fine with that. You know, they said, yeah, if you can keep your own business going as well, then do so. You've got no problem with that, as long as you're hitting the targets, etc., with the students, getting them through to, you know, get their work experience, books up to date and all that sort of thing. And then, so that all went down the pan. I had a look around at other options and I thought, oh, yeah, there's nothing of that nature around here that I'd got the experience in. I started there in 2003 and was there for 12 years, basically. So I built an awful lot of experience up there. Also added lots of teaching experience and qualifications, coaching, mentoring, all these different elements were part of what I was offering. You know, you became, you know, a professional friend to every student on your timetable, basically, in every way you possibly could, because the great thing about it was the more staff you had and the more students ultimately you attracted as a result, the more money you could make as a company, which is, you know, by the by. But the more people can support with their own skills those who need separate little bits and pieces. Yeah. You know, there's people there who were violent. You know, there's people there who are so shy that, you know, you couldn't get them into a classroom sometimes with another person, things of that nature. So you have the whole gamut, and you learn a lot. You learn a lot about the human psyche and spirit and, you know, abilities, and the word again, the neurology going on in there. And then I got totally out of left field, I got a call from somebody else who I knew, who said, we're looking for an IT tutor at, I'll use the word Featherstone because people know where Featherstone Prison is in North Wolverhampton, in the area. But it was the brand new one that had been built a few years ago, funnily enough, at which my stepdaughter had been one of the office workers there for the team and had met her new husband, funnily enough, 3 or 4 years earlier while they were building it. And so I worked in prison. I went to prison. I love to tell people, I've been to prison, you know. But I did it for the right reasons, and I had a key. That's the big difference. That's it. I could tell you some stories from that. But I was only there a year because they knew fairly quickly that I was not going to take no for an answer. When they promised me the technology to help develop their technological facilities, I held them to it. And when it didn't happen, I said, look, there's no point me carrying on like doing this because you're not giving me what you've promised me. So we agreed to part company just over a year after I started. But it was, as I say, fascinating. Fascinating to see that side of the world. Very fascinating. Very fascinating to see all the drones dropping in with drugs and phones and things like that. Yeah, you wouldn't believe it. One of my colleagues, he was the last going out. We normally finished our sort of sessions around 5 o'clock. He'd be out of the prison by 5:30 latest, through the different, you know, security things. One guy stayed behind to do something, and come 6 o'clock, this is in winter, by the way, so it's dark, he heard the buzzing up in the air, and he saw this light coming down, and this he said it was sort of 3 foot across, this drone. It was huge, he said, with a box underneath it, and he was walking along with a bag of his stuff, which would be checked on his way out and all that sort of thing. We all had that sort of thing day in, day out. And basically, he launched his bag at it and brought it out the sky. It crashed. And he saw the guy standing in the other side of an area with a broom in his hand, pretending to be cleaning, run off around the other side. That was very quickly after that, all of the areas around all the blocks where the prisoners lived and worked and went for their lessons and things like that, there was netting put across, metal netting, so they had to stop. Fascinating stuff. And that was about 2018. I finished there. Since then, I just went back to doing more design work for people that I knew needed it, and have done for a while. But around that same time, what's the next question?
Where did the name Neurology Nut come from?
Oh, right, yes.
So, apparently say you're known as the Neurology Nut.
Well, I'm a marketing man. You've got to hang something on you. Give yourself a slogan. No, I wouldn't say I'm known as a neurology nut. I am a neurology nut. A nut in, I'm mad about it, passionate about it. I'm fascinated by it.
Yeah.
And it came to pass as a result of my old, I call war wounds, my old football injuries of my ankles being, getting worse, starting to hurt, especially my left ankle. It had started to not respond properly, I suppose is the best way. I couldn't put my foot down flat on the floor. I'm using my hands here, you can't see all, obviously. I couldn't put that left foot flat on the floor properly to take my weight. And over the years, my balance had started to go all over the place, really, in terms of, and that's a purely physical thing, because if you can't get the balance between one foot and the other right, you're never going to have your centre of gravity proper, in the right place. So I'd got to the point where, and the prison, being in the prison was one of the issues for me, because from one block to another, it's a pretty, it's a half a mile walk, right? From, you got to, if you're moving from one block to another to teach in different blocks, basically, because then they weren't let different people weren't allowed to mix, obviously. You can't have one type of offender mixing with another and that sort of thing. That was a definite no-no. You're just asking for trouble. My colleagues who I worked with, one of whom is still a good mate, he left shortly after me as well, because he worked in technology side of things, because it was just being run down. He said they're not going to do what they're supposed to be doing, ever. I won't go into the politics of that. That's madness. He said, your limp's getting worse. I said, is it? Yeah. I hadn't noticed, because I've never had any real pain with it. But he said, you're definitely getting worse. Perhaps it's all the stairs you have to walk. And stairs are my big problem, because my left foot goes out on its outside edge to get upstairs. And my wife had said, so we've always had a lovely big, well, several lovely big dogs. She was worried that going out walking my dog, which was a big golden retriever at the time, she says, I'd fallen over several times as a result, just on rough ground and things like that. Gone over on the ankle, hurt it even more, things like that. Sprains, if you like, but without any real pain or anything. I seem to sort of got on with those sort of things. She said, one of these days you're going to be walking down the street and you'll fall off the pavement into traffic. So you better get to the doctors and see if somebody can have a look at it and do something about it. Cutting the story really short. Had a load of tests, electrolysis tests and this, that and the other with specialists in Birmingham and QE and the main hospital and whatever. seen you, and they said it's a neurological issue. It's your brain not telling your foot what to do properly. And that's because nerves in the leg have sort of become cul-de-sacs. They're not getting information through to the foot ultimately because of the damage in your ankle. You know, whatever it's done, it's stopping the messages getting through to keep your foot in the right position. I thought, that's bonkers, right? What's my brain got to do with that? Because whilst, as I say, whilst having worked and understood that with autistic people, that the brain has a lot to do with how you are in lots of different ways, I'd never sort of related it to my own physical condition. But bit by bit, that sort of led me to look into neurology in much more detail, which I have done for the last 3-4 years now. Yeah, that was 18, 19, and then COVID was a bit of a pain in the neck, obviously that year, but pain in the ankle because I couldn't have anything done. I went to the hospital once during that year and they said, well, we can't put you in front of staff and this, that and the other just for that. You know, there's much more important things to be doing. And like a lot of people, I'm on the waiting list to have something done sometime. Not that it's life-threatening or in any way. So, you know, I can't really dig my heels in. Can't dig my heels in. That's the wrong phrase to use, really. And get what I need. So, neurology, I just started reading about neurology. I had done, and I've told Karen this before in the past, early when I was servicing clients, you know, with their own businesses and things, I'd done some coaching practice courses. I've done mentoring first, then coaching. And this is before I'd even gone to the college, because I thought, but people are asking me questions I can't answer, you know, directly. I can't be as helpful to them as I'd like. But they were asking me questions about how to run businesses and things like that, that, you know, I can only tell you what I know, you know, but they wanted to know, you know, how to change the way they're doing things and, you know, how to think things through differently and things like that. Whether to employ different people because of the way, you know, what they needed and things like that. And I was quite taken aback that people would put any sort of, you know, what's the right word? Any stall in what I'd got to say. But, you know, coaching led me to wanting to know more about those sort of things. Yeah, I was talking about Karen. Karen being an NLP is one of the things I'd come across in sort of the 90s, if you like, when I saw it starting to happen and was fascinated. And also because I realized that words are so important. And I was, as I said earlier, fascinated by words, not just visually, but how to use words. And it's all part of marketing at the end of the day. You use the right words, you know, you can make people buy. You know, it's I was reading something recently about the difference between join us or sign up, for instance, when you press a button on a website. Big differences. Join us says so much more about, you know, becoming part of something, doesn't it? And sign up sounds a bit more clinical. Yeah. So just a little subtle example. So neurology sort of started taking over my life. I started to think about how and this is before COVID hit, of course, and I'm missing one key point out, which I'll come back to in a minute. I thought about how to make a business out of, you know, using neurology to help people change the way they think. This had also come about as a result of my research into neurology led me to discover is the right word, because you were never going to just stumble across this without knowing what you were looking for. A product that people wear to improve their pain, and it was pain fundamentally, a lot of other things, but it was aimed at people with neurological problems. The main one being something like, and again, I wouldn't have believed this was neurological, plantar fasciitis. The pain you get in the bottom of your heels, and it's excruciating pain. As an example, there's lots of other leg-based pains, again, which are neurologically based, apparently. And I can only take the experts' word for that, because I'm not going to go backwards and start checking out their research. And when you apply this product to anything with any kind of neurological issue, it deals with the issue right in the brain, instantly, in seconds, right? It changes neurological pathways to tell your brain that's not a pain you need to be concerned about, basically, and would then start reducing the experience of pain in, I'm going to keep using plantar fasciitis as the example. The guy who I met just purely by luck in my discovery was the guy who had plantar fasciitis himself. And he said within weeks, I could walk without pain. Within months, it had gone completely. But instantly, as I say, instantly, when you try this product, you feel a difference. It's not like it takes a while. It's not like antidepressants take several weeks to actually start kicking in or whatever. This gives you an instant response if you've got pain. And I thought, how the hell does that do that? That is miraculous, literally is miraculous. And I discovered that the inventor, a Canadian guy, who invented it after years and years, nearly 20 years of research or something, because his mother had got MS, multiple sclerosis, and he was devastated by it. He used her as a guinea pig, took her around the world to all kinds of different people, doctors researching neurological issues, and eventually, and he still won't tell anybody, he created this brilliant product that literally works like, and this is the best way of trying to describe it to people who have an understanding of this sort of thing, like reflexology. If you can work on the sensitive points, the sensors, nerve sensitive points on the feet to affect things in other parts of your body, then you get an idea that this stuff works, because these products are insoles in shoes and socks. What is inside the sock, and it's literally embroidered into it, is a pattern, that stimulates certain areas of the feet. There's a bar of it across the feet, ball of the feet, and sends a message to your brain to say, this pain here doesn't affect me. And it doesn't have to be in the feet or the legs. It can be pain anywhere, anything you've got, whether it's sciatica and all those sort of things. And it works. It works best on people with neurological problems. I've seen, and there are 50,000 plus examples of the people who've already got it now. They reckon there's over 5 million now, because it started in 2016 in Canada, quickly spread to America. Obviously, they launched in North America very quickly after that. And there are video testimonies galore on Facebook. But, and I still don't get my head around this, and because I joined up with them, because it doesn't cost much to join. But if you find it and you use it, you want to join, because it's, you just want to tell everybody about it, and that's what they rely on. They don't do any big marketing spend. It's all done word of mouth, and you can earn money out of it, obviously, because one of the things the guy who actually invented it said is, I want people who cannot earn a living doing other things because of their pain to earn money because of their pain,
Mm.
which is, I thought, was a great way of looking at things. He doesn't go out and tell everybody that, but his mission statement is changing 1 billion lives.
Yeah.
And that's what he's aiming to do, change 1 billion lives. And he doesn't really say how, and that's the beauty of it. He won't tell you how, but the brain scan information they've got on the website is fascinating. You know, they've got specialists who are checking on this all the time, developing the product all the time as well, you know, to get better and better, and can be targeted for different kinds of issues you might have. There's a product for sleep to help you sleep, which is the best time to, you know, address neurological issues while you're in your subconscious sleep, and that convinced me even more about neurology, and I just had to, you know, learn more and more. And as a result, I found another scientist, former teacher called Carol Dweck, who wrote a book called Mindset. And her work was mainly aimed at young people and getting them to learn more easily, I should say. And through her work, she identified 2 or 3 different classes, if you like, of mindset. People who have a fixed mindset, and the best way I can describe this is people who go through school and say, I've done it, that's it, I'm off now. Yeah, I've got nothing else to learn, really. They see school as the learning environment. After that, anything else is not of interest, really. Might be a bonus, but I'll only learn what's relevant to my work, for instance. And those are people who are self-limiting their ability to develop further, as I see it. And then there's growth mindset. This is the people who are open-minded enough to realize that you never stop learning. You know, there's always something new to learn. And just by having a curious mind, you will enjoy your life better.
Yeah.
You know? I've spoken to people who will totally disagree with that based on, well, I'm happy. We've got enough money coming in. We have a holiday every year and blah, blah, blah. And I'm happy. Fine. Fine. But if you cannot see anything outside that box, you've got a fixed mindset, haven't you? Yeah. And if you're happy, I'm not going to push you to think differently, because there's no point, is there? But people with an open growth mindset have the opportunity, that's the key thing, to look at the way they think and to think about the elements that are factored into their decision making. Now, this is where I become the mindset man. What other questions had you got there?
I got, what is the neurological fitness?
What is
neurological fitness?
Neurological fitness. Well, I suppose that's what I'm getting towards anyway. Yeah. Okay. Great. Yeah. I'm glad I stopped and asked. That was perfect. So I always find it difficult because every single person I talk to about this and offer the abilities, if you like, the practices to, has a different objective. You know, we've all got goals, dreams, whatever you want to call them, ambitions. We all have insecurities. We all have a past. And I suppose fitness is an interesting word you use there, because we can all be brain fit in terms of the ability to think clearly, if you like, or to feel compos mentis enough to make a decision about something, until we lose those faculties, of course, which obviously tend to in later life. And another good example of this, from switching back to my investigations about neurology, people who have brain trauma, damage, you know, accidents, whatever it might be, get shot in the head, things like that. This element fascinated me tremendously. And it made me realize that the brain doesn't care about me, you, doesn't care about you. It just needs you to stay alive.
Yeah.
If you don't stay alive, its purpose is gone. Yeah. Which sounds obvious, but its purpose is gone if, one, we shut down in our learning, I'd say. Our purpose is gone if we stop looking outward to things. If we, if we become flat earthers, shall we say, as an example, you're denying our reality, yeah, on the basis that we know the earth isn't flat. We've got pictures. We've got the single blue pixel picture from Voyager. Went there to Neptune and looked back and saw us as, there's no flat earth. There's no flat solar system. It may be slightly concentric in lots of ways, but it's not a flat earth. So your brain is there to exist. Regardless of what you do, it will, and again, most people will automatically deny the next statement because they feel that that's impossible. Your brain controls what you do, right? It's making me do that now. Yeah?
Yeah.
My control on that is unconscious.
Yeah.
I know that's happening.
Yeah.
But without my brain, I couldn't do that.
No.
The consciousness is a tiny part, let's say 10 to 20%. Let's probably big it up more than actually. Oh no, we hear this phrase about we only do 20% of our brain. That's one of those old wives' tales that, we probably don't even use that much, because most of the brain, especially if it's been damaged, and this is where the evidence for this comes from. If it's been damaged, somebody's had a brain chopped off, something in an accident or whatever, you don't die. You're not going to die unless the brain is so badly, you'd have to lose a lot of your brain to die there. You could probably, and I'm sure there are examples, you can probably survive on half of, one side of the cortex. You'd lose a lot of faculties, but you'd still be able to survive and sit in a chair and be fed and all those sort of things. And the brain would regenerate as best it possibly can in those situations. And that, as I say, that's what made me realize that whilst we live our lives semi-consciously, I'm going to use the word semi rather than unconsciously, we're not unconscious, obviously, we do have the opportunity to make better use of our brains. But the only way we can do that is, using the terminology in the question, is to go on a fitness trip, if you like, for the brain. And that can be anything from learning more about a specific subject, or becoming more aware of the things that go on in our brain that we believe are within our control, but we have to admit aren't. The one thing you cannot deny, no one can deny, if they bothered looking at it, most people will deny it, is that, oh, my dog started crying, is that we, sorry, I'm going to move him, sorry, otherwise he'll keep doing it. Sorry. Out. Go on. Out. Oh, they were both there, lying in the hall, moaning. The one thing we can deny is that we don't have control. But if you realize that our past has built what's in here, whatever happened in that past is affecting the decisions we make now. What you can't do is erase all of that. But what you can do is get on the brain cycle, fitness cycle, and input new information that eventually builds up to be the key information that you make your decisions with. And the old traumatic stuff, the biases that we, are embedded with by our parents, and I'll always refer to a fantastic poem, which ends with and don't have any kids yourself, right? Because it's all about parentage. Philip Larkin, this be the verse. And pardon my French, but there's a swear word coming up. The first line is, they fuck you up, your mum and dad. They may not mean to, but they do. And it goes on to talk about because they've, in their turn, been fed stuff from way back. And now it's here. Now it's here up for us. What do? We just pass it on. We pass it on. It's a genetic thing, you might say, but it's a cognitive part of the brain that we have had this stuff embedded in our brains by our forefathers and their forefathers, and you cannot escape from that. But if you are aware of it, you can deal with it in terms of making better decisions for yourself and your people around you. We can have better interactions, communications with each other, because we are fundamentally, I say, controlled by the brain, and generally, and again, everyone will deny this, I don't like using the word, but it's a difficult to find the right word that encompasses everybody. We're lazy, well, I'm happy with where I am. I don't have to think any differently. That's okay, but you're missing opportunities. And we as a species, and this is where the brain would support me, I'm sure, because the brain wants to evolve. If we don't evolve, if we don't leave this baggage behind, we're never going to get to Mars or whatever. We're never going to get in a state of mind that is truly happy is not the right word. It's fulfilling its purpose. We all want to fulfill our purpose. We want to find that purpose in something we do the best we can at it, and not just do it for the money or for the status. Society's got to the point, certainly Western society, where we do things because for all the wrong reasons. And I'm only trying to express to people who I could work with that I'm not going to tell you not to do things. I'm going to show you how to do things in a different way that will be more beneficial for you in the longer term. And NLP, using the right words for a start, that's one of the cores. As far as I'm concerned, if you can use much more affirmative language to yourself, as if you're the one telling you can do this, you can do that, that's possible, I am good at this, etc., then you can override those negative inner voices that keep telling us you're not good enough, he's better than you than that, and you'll never do that, because we need to take more risks.
We do.
We want to go on the high wire, we want to jump out of aeroplanes, we want to break the barriers, enjoy potential. Our potential is what neurology is all about.
That's that. So has the pandemic affected your business?
On the basis that you're helping with neurological wearable technology, yes, because you have to demonstrate it. People don't really get it until they see it's working. I can do videos galore on this sort of thing, and I can direct people to these videos of other people showing what the benefits are for them. But still, people don't believe it. They've got to, say, well, that's just one person in Canada. Oh, I don't know Canada. You know, they can't get it through the brain. Yeah, but there are some fantastic things. A woman with Parkinson's, just one example. She's brilliant. She's walking to the camera like this, you know, and then she says, I'm going to step on, I'm going to step up. She can hardly talk. And then she steps onto the technology and she's absolutely brilliant. And she does the same with a friend. This is the best part of it. Was it a friend or a sister, I think it was, who's got a different problem. I forget what her problem was. And they just break down in tears together, you know, because they can stand up and hold each other and, you know, those sort of things. It's lovely. It's just great to see that, you know, the technology can work, and you don't need to pump yourself full of drugs to get pain free.
Yeah.
The problem of having on a marketing basis is the only people who really get to see these people are with the issues are people in the healthcare industry already, people, ex-nurses and things. I know a nurse who's doing very well with it, because she knows all the people. But it's not the people at the extreme end that I'm looking to help, really, because they should be introduced to something like this automatically. I would hope. I know that's probably not true, but I even get sort of rebuffed from websites that are groups that have been put together by people with specific issues, like, you know, MND or whatever, saying you can't come on here and tell us that this is going to change our lives. Why not? It can. You're just denying and that's where I'm saying that's the fixed mindset. You believe your doctor, who knows nothing about it. You know, he's just pumping you full of things because he's paid by pharmaceutical companies to do that indirectly.
That's it. And it also keeps you on your feet as well, doesn't it? Because if you go and push somebody without the insoles, chances are they'd fall over.
Well, that's one of the tests you have to do.
But
the resistance test.
With them, it stops.
It's brilliant seeing that.
And it's good. Yeah. I mean, I've got them because I've got them off my sister. And it's helped me a lot, because the amount of times that I'd end up falling over.
Yeah, well, it helps me.
Obviously, something like that. So
the other thing that I did mention on the wearable technology is that there's a product now called an e-sleeve, which you wear on your forearm, and there's some funky designs gone to help attract the right sort of market, because it's helping young people get through their exams, because it's all clearing the fog up here. It's taking away anxiety and things like that, and then allowing them to focus on what they need to do. And better than that, people with autism are actively taking part in normal, should we say, lessons and things in classes, using the technology.
And is that available abroad?
It's still only available in Canada, North America, Britain. Australia's coming next. I think they were going to launch in Australia last year or this year, but that's been delayed a little bit by the COVID situation. There are people desperate for it, calling, you know, saying, why can't we get it in Germany, in India, and South Africa was the other one they trying.
Could people from these 5 countries order from you?
I would have thought, if you can reach them, if they can find.
If they contacted you after this broadcast.
They certainly can, because
they could contact you, and you could get it for them. And
well, we can certainly do that. Obviously, there's costs involved in getting it to them, but when you think about the typical product is 40 to 50 quid, you know, and then I don't know, a tenner of flight, sending it by post or whatever. It becomes, you've got to know, you've got to feel that it's going to be worth your while doing it. And it could be this sort of technology should be a lot more expensive, really. I would have thought.
Mm.
But increasingly, it's a numbers game. You know, the more people who buy it, the the
Cheap
more
it becomes.
affordable it'll become. Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm on my sort of third or fourth pair of socks now, but I just wear them all the time.
Yeah.
Or you know, I've got insoles in boots and things like that. That all help. And again, that's a mindset thing. It's about seeing the possibility rather than, and I was guilty myself when I saw the guy demonstrating. Thought, what? You're kidding me? How's that going to work? You know, we all do, and that's healthy to be skeptical, because a lot of us will be ripped off by stuff that doesn't work. Or, you know, did you see that thing about what was it called? That drug, respiratory something, I forget what it, that had been faked in America, in India, sorry. And people have been, you know, they're dying because they're buying this fake drug that the scammers are trying to sell to everybody. Even selling fire extinguishers to people, telling them it's oxygen, things like that. In India, it's terrible state of affairs.
So, looking back over your life, is there anything that you would have changed?
Hey, I'm not that old yet. Go on, looking back on.
Looking back over your whole life now, is there anything that you go back and change, knowing what you know now?
Oh, this is where you're supposed to say no, isn't it?
Yes. Some people have said no. Other people have said, yeah, well, I would have changed X, Y, Z having known what I know now.
You know what I would have done? I would, only one thing, really, because it would have changed everything. I would have gone to college to do a business degree. Not just art. Art was the soft option, if you like, in lots of ways. But I was good at art. You know, I won trophies at school for art. I am a good artist. I used to be. I'm not anymore because I've just had a practice. And again, I would have been a more successful internet entrepreneur back then. I would have been much wealthier, I'm sure. And I would have had time now for more art. I don't regret doing the things I did. You know, the wife always questioned why I was at the special needs college for so long, because I never earned a lot of money doing it, but it was wonderful work, working with those people, and I got so much out of it. But, you know, it's meant we've been stuck in the house we're in now for 30 odd years instead of 15 when we plan to move on to something else. But, you know, you pay your money, you take your choice. Don't you?
That's there. Right. So, how can people listening to the broadcast help you? And if they need help off you, where can they get in touch with you?
Well, I can first visit my website, which has been there since 1996, when I registered my domain name, Chris G Day. Don't forget the G. There's plenty of Chris Days out there. I even met one once. Another Chris Day. That was funny. chrisgday.net. Net, because I used to work on the internet, purely internet. You're supposed to only use certain suffixes in certain industries, but that's gone out the window these days. 07771 914 216. Call me anytime. But not yet. Well, the phone's in the other room. But they're not watching live. And how can people help me? It's a good question. Open some doors. That's all. Yeah. There are people out there that need help. People you all know of who need help, who refuse help. A lot of the people I'm trying to help are what I would call people stuck on the treadmill that, you know, I was myself in lots of ways, doing the same thing for the money. And that's all we do. And we miss opportunities to, you know, be more fulfilled. Let's keep using that word. There are great opportunities out there to do other things while still being economically viable and earning plenty of money. We are all capable of more, and I can help you do exactly that, whoever you are, if you want to.
That's the thing, if I want to.
If you're ready to. That's the other big thing. I'll never forget reading Napoleon Hill, Think and Grow Rich. He said, and he wrote that book in 1937, something like that. He later said things like, words to the effect of, people have to read my book 3 or 4 times to actually learn anything from it. You know, because 9 times out of 10, they're not in the right place to actually take anything from it. So you need to go back to good books.
Yeah.
Reading good books is, you know, a life enhancer and will open your mind. Won't open doors, it'll open your mind to potential and opportunity. And surely that's what we all want from life.
That's it. And it's also on YouTube as well, Think and Grow Rich.
Yes. Yeah.
So if you have difficulty reading, why not listen to it?
Yeah.
And sometimes you can listen to things and it goes in subconsciously.
Of course. Well, again, back to my education days. Yeah, we all learn different ways. Yeah, absolutely. And you've got to try and cover all of those things, and that's tricky when you're a one-man band. You know, you can't do everything. You know, you've got to do what you enjoy doing ultimately, and hopefully people take you at your word. You know, because trust is a big issue these days as well.
That's it.
So, I won't do the Shere Khan thing. I know. What's the Shere Khan? What was the snake's name? In Jungle Book. Trust in me. Yeah.
Have you got any questions?
Good fun. Thank you.
Have you got any questions, Mandy?
Sorry?
Has Mandy got any questions for you?
Oh, sorry. Yeah.
I have a question on you, Chris. You said you had issues with your foot.
Yeah.
You could not walk. I had such an idea in my head. As when you have issues with your feet and you cannot walk and you have lots of pain and everything, does it mean that you have in this moment that you have problems in your life and you don't know which way you want to go? That's why it signalizes in your head that there's something wrong, that you cannot walk and you, yeah? Do you understand?
I know where you're going, yeah. Yeah, interesting.
Would it be that way, that your problems with your foot, that you didn't know which way you really wanted to go?
Yeah. That makes complete sense. Yeah, I totally buy into that sort of way of, you know, physical energy and kinesiologist type things. I've had some kinesiology myself in the past, and the different parts of the body are telling you certain things, obviously. Yes, I suppose, as I say, I would have had, as I say, if I go back to my, you know, having done business studies and things like, if I did that, I would be much more, what's the word, you know, conscious of opportunities and the way to actually structure my own future back then. Yeah, never really thought about it. I wanted to be an artist, a designer, a creative. I was good at all that sort of thing, so money kept coming in. So only when the internet came along and watered down, is how I feel it, my ability to be a specialist, if you like, in what I was doing. And everybody could do it almost. Everybody can now. There's no point becoming a web designer these days because you can do it yourself. If you've got anything in here, of course. Because it's possible for everybody to learn these things very quickly and easily. But once you get to sort of 61, you start thinking, well, I've got, you know, 20 years to do something different now, potentially. But I don't believe, perhaps this is just my own self-limiting beliefs, I'm never going to be an employed person for that period of time into my 80s. Who is? But I can develop something for myself using all that experience I've already had to help other people make better decisions than I made, ultimately. I don't think I'm going to change my direction in any great deal there. The neurology thing is a huge change of direction, really, from my designing work. And I still won't say no to people who come to me say, can you design me X, Y, Z? Because I still enjoy that. Design for me is my creative outlet, if you like, in that. But I'm absolutely, sold on the idea that neurological technology is going to change the world, if you like, in lots of ways. Certainly the medical world, and big pharma are going to be buying it up big time. The guy who invented the wearable technology, he's had to fend off people left, right, and centre already, because they just want to buy it and put it to bed, if you know what I mean. Because it really is going to change their world as much as the people who use it.
Yeah.
Hopefully.
That's
and that's why I'm so keen, because I don't believe big corporations should rule the world.
No.
And I think more and more people feel like that. Unless, of course, you work for them and you earn a living on the back of them.
That's fair. Well, thank you very much for joining me for afternoon tea today, Chris.
Thank you. I didn't even touch my drink.